Franklin Roosevelt, like all presidents of the United States, endured long receiving lines at the White House. He often complained that no one really paid any attention to what he said. And so one day during a reception, he decided to try an experiment. As each person passed down the line and shook his hand, he murmured earnestly, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." And the guests responded with phrases like, "Marvelous. Keep up the good work. We are proud of you. God bless you, sir." It was not till the end of the reception, when he greeted the ambassador from Bolivia, that his words were actually heard. And without missing a beat, the ambassador leaned over and whispered, "I'm sure she had it coming." I'm not sure I believe that Roosevelt really played this joke on, yes, he might have, at the White House. But the story reminds us that everyone, presidents and their guests, our children, lovers, friends, all want to know that we matter and that we are heard, that we are understood. What better way to be affirmed than for others to truly listen to us, even listening carefully enough to hear the message that sometimes exists hidden under the words. In Mark Nepo's book, 7,000 Ways to Listen, he emphasizes that listening dissolves isolation, the tremendous loneliness that exists today. The universe is a continuous web, poet Stanley Kunitz wrote. Touch it at any point, and the whole web quivers. When we know we are seen and appreciated, our feelings of isolation from friends and even from nature would melt away. We feel a connection with some kind of life beyond ourselves, and it can even cross species. Perhaps you've had an experience with an animal when they are taking in your presence, the tone of voice, your posture, and you are hyper aware of them, and it's clear that they are aware of you. As I was preparing this message, there was a reel on the internet that really captured my attention. In a zoo, there is an exuberant toddler in a bright yellow ruffled sundress on one side of the glass, and a curious, seemingly amazed male cheetah on the other. They are at face level, and if the thick glass wasn't there, they would be whiskers to cheek. She's chattering, she's squealing, she's waving her arms, pressing her hands against the glass. And the cheetah is just wide-eyed and winces a little when she quickly moves against the glass. But there is no cheetah pacing, no showing of teeth. His wide eyes follow every move she makes. It's like he's incredulous. All this could have been an assessment for how tasty she would be, if only that glass were not between them. But the adults recording this are murmuring about the profound connection they're witnessing. The humans in the video are delighted, sensing a connection beyond our species. And I thought, this cheetah's attentiveness is what good listening looks like. Not exactly that when you're listening well to someone, it looks like you would like to eat them up. But for this animal and this child, there's definitely some connection. It was amazing. In his essay, Spiritual Laws, Unitarian Transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that he believed listening can direct our life path to happiness and meaning. He wrote, "There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. He doesn't ask his reader to withdraw from life and reflect, but says, place yourself in the middle of the stream of power. Go into the middle of all the noise and the chaos. He encouraged his readers to listen for what is obvious or subtle. He believed that if we truly listen to the messages available to us, society and science and religions and the arts would organize themselves like the rose and the air and the sun. If we listen, we would have the answer to the question, he said, what is life asking of me? Evelyn Glennie knows this more than most people. She is considered the best-known percussionist in the world. Ms. Glennie plays over 1,000 traditional and unconventional instruments: marimba, xylophone, mufflers, timpani, kitchen utensils, chimes, car wheel rims, the African djembe, garage can lids, Irish bodhrán, steel pan, and flower pots, to name a few. The total weight of her percussion instrument is 2 tons. At her lectures and performances, she tells her audiences, music is about listening, and my job is to teach the world to listen. Her level of accomplishment, 1,000 instruments, is really impressive. But her message about listening is amazing because Evelyn Glennie is almost 100% hearing loss. She started music lessons when she was very young, and she discovered that she could identify the pitch of any note without the assistance of an instrument or sheet music. She started losing her hearing at 8 and had lost her hearing completely by the time she was 12. And one day, she played a friend's percussion instrument, and she said it just felt right. When she approached a music teacher to take lessons, he was confused. How could she learn when she couldn't hear sounds? His later response to her request was brilliant. When she arrived for her first lesson, he gave her a drum. Take it, he said. See you next week. She had been expecting lessons on how to hold the drum, the stick, the rhythms to practice. And she took the drum home and during the week figured out how it was put together and how many kinds of vibrations it could make. Evelyn returned the next week with bruises all over her hands and her arms. She had fully investigated the instrument's possibilities to create sound. She also returned to her teacher with an understanding of how her body could hear. In her lessons, she and her teacher would put their hands on the wall when playing music and feel the wall trembling. Evelyn found she could hear the vibrations of notes through her fingers, the bones in her arms, legs, and her cheekbones. She'd feel the different sound a mallet would make when the wool around the striking head was warped, wrapped tightly, or loosely. Over time, she learned how to use her hearing of the instrument's vibrations to achieve increasingly exact tunings. She felt and comprehended the music through being attuned to her body. Soon, she didn't just play rhythm. She translated it. She interpreted it. As a young adult, she applied to the Royal Academy of Music in London. Her application, as you can imagine, was rejected because they couldn't imagine the future of a musician with profound hearing loss. She challenged the Academy to select their students on their ability to perform, their love of music, and the craft of creating sound. After considerable conversation and several auditions, Not only did they accept her, but they changed their application process. Listening takes a constant effort to live below the sheer fact of things. It is the work of being human. And as I understand it, it is the center of Unitarian Universalism from which all other things grow. Mid-ministry career, and it very well could have been with Anne's parents, I added something new to the Celebration of Life services. At the end of the memorial service, I'd create a word collage of phrases that were spoken by friends and family throughout the celebration. Someone would facilitate going around with a microphone because I was standing off to the side, writing notes, writing phrases. It became a spiritual discipline for me. I'd listen for the words and phrases that were spoken, but even more, how they were spoken. Is the speaker's voice warm with emotion, or do they speak with a voice held tight with what remains unsaid? Like the vibrations that bounce off Evelyn Glennie's instruments, the responses from the gathering fill the space in the room. How do those who are gathered breathe or don't breathe in every moment? Do they hold their breath? Do they laugh with delight at a phrase or sit up straight and look down at the floor? When are the same personal characteristics described by different people, whether it's how the deceased shared their ice cream, the measles, or their inheritance with their siblings, or when they traveled alone, or sang solo, or lived in a beautiful, isolated cottage? It was helpful to know the person who had died, but that wasn't really necessary. It was lowly listening to what was happening in the room within that hour that really mattered. That's what brought together the bits of meaning from everyone's life. It's an easy task to do that, and yet it's really difficult. And I thought, what are people doing during the closing words but getting ready to leave? But what if they heard their own words again, grouped by meaning? How would that feel to give closure to a service? In 1987, David Issei was 21 years old, and he had begun his studies in the New York City Medical School. David was walking down a street in the east end of the city when he was intrigued by a storefront enterprise. The people inside were transit workers, former heroin addicts, now in recovery, but afflicted with AIDS. They weren't going to be living for many more years, and they knew it. And they had a mission, and it was to have a museum built about addiction. They had models of the museum, blueprints for the exhibits, and notebooks filled with rejection letters from their pleas for building funds. David Issei was so moved by their determination that he started calling all the radio stations, asking them to cover this powerful story. And he was rejected by every single one, except one small community media station. He found the receptive voice of Amy Goodman, who would later become known nationwide for her news broadcast, Democracy Now! They had such a small staff, she explained. Why don't you do it and just bring it in and give it to us? David Issei said, as soon as I pressed the record button, I knew this is what I would do, not medical school. The story he created was heard by a staff person from National Public Radio, and shortly thereafter he was hired to provide social justice commentaries. It was a gradual progression of events that created what is now called StoryCorps. And this morning I woke up to listen to those stories about fathers. The identifying phrase of StoryCorps is, listening is an act of love. In October 2003, David Issei and NPR opened a booth at Grand Central Terminal in New York City. Anyone could make an appointment to bring someone they cherished into the booth and to invite them to tell their story, to ask questions and invite them to answer those questions and have it recorded. One recording would go home with them, and one went to the Library of Congress. Issei's goal was to build connections between people and teach the value of listening. He wanted to develop the culture of our country that affirms the importance of every person's story. Studs Terkel, an author, historian, broadcaster, is famous for collecting and making public the stories of ordinary people and the beauty and the strength found in ordinary people, cut the ribbon on the first day the booth opened. He offered a challenge. We know the architect who built this place, and he gestured to the terminal. Your job is to gather the stories of those who laid these floors, whose hands put up these walls. Well, Issei and NPR, they had no idea how popular this recording sessions would become. It's still happening, as you know. There's a variety of ways to be involved in the project. If it is with a traveling booth, and they do have these, people sign up for an appointment. Because the project wants to make itself available to all people, half of the appointments are left open for those who may be unhoused, for immigrants, or those who have just never heard of this project before and wander in. There are tears as one person after another realizes that they matter, that they won't be forgotten. The lowly listening of Emerson happens in that moment. The full body listening through heart and bones of Evelyn Glennie is there too. At each interview, there is a facilitator. And those facilitators have listened to tens of thousands of stories. And what have they learned from what they've heard? The facilitators said they were filled with hope. From the stories they heard, they have evidence that people are basically good. In addition, they concluded that if we think we know the internal life of someone by looking at their appearance, we are wrong. If we think we know the fullness of someone's life, even if we have known them for years, it is almost certainly true that we do not. Ask questions, even if we think we know the answer. Their final conclusion was this: cherish each day and be grateful for the life that we are given. When Emerson wrote his essay, Spiritual Laws, he said that by listening fully for what is obvious and subtle, we shall hear the right word, especially we're in the middle of the power and struggle of life. And we will rightly know what life is asking of us, and we will be able to respond with clarity and with purpose. May it be so. And so, if this is what life is asking of us, and if we can hear it, how will we respond? How will we respond? I invite you to take out your little bundle of string. You knew there was a purpose for this. No doubt you have been waiting with great anticipation. So, unroll it. Take off the little ribbon. I did it so you can just pull it right off. And just, unroll it. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel it, it's just a little rough. I chose a twine that's kind of rough. It's kind of gritty. It's been in my garage for a long time. Look at how long it is. I don't know how long yours is. Everyone is different. Feel the weight of it. Maybe you want to smell it. Don't taste it. It's been in the garage for a long time. Some strings are long, some are short. Now, remember these words from the reading while you're doing that. There was a time when it wasn't uncommon to use a piece of string to guide words that otherwise might falter on their way to their destinations. Shy people carried a little bunch of string in their pockets. So lowly listening is really challenging. We're not just passively receiving a message from someone else. It's really a lot of hard work. After I would do that listening in a memorial service, I would be really tired, but feel really good. The person listening is probably more active than the person talking if they're doing lowly listening. So I'm going to ask you to do something that's a little bit chaotic. I felt the energy in the room when I came here. I think you're up for it. So I'm going to ask you to be connected as one big piece by taking your string and having someone else hold it. So, you're going to have to get up and stand if you can. If you can't stand, people are going to go and move toward that person so they can be included. So you may have to move where you are and just come in a bit. So across the aisles, people standing, sitting, you're going to connect with your strings. I hope that you probably have plenty from my plan. You probably have a double extra. So all the way across, everybody, come on in from the side. So make sure each person, you can sit down and someone can come to you. If you need anyone have any extra strings? No? Okay, make sure you're going to have one string per person on each hand. So it's not going to work unless you're connected by your strings. So basically make a big circle and include everybody. So you need two hands holding strings. Yep, okay, let's see if you can do that. She's going to do it because she's going to get in the middle of it. So yep, Vicki's going to do it. You have to do it. So Vicki's in there too. See, I told you this is going to be exciting. And you guys need to be connected to the whole. You'll see. If it's possible. Well then, all right. So here's what's going to happen. One person here, only one person, has been asked to make a little tug on a string. When you receive the tug, pass it on. Do you see what's going to happen? Did you do this as a kid? You'd have a squeeze and it would go around the circle. Don't let go. Everybody hold on to your string. Hold on to your string. One person will pull on their string, and when you get the pull, you pull the next person. No speaking. Shh. This part's quiet. Shh. Pass it on. Just pass it on. Just like we're in a kid's game. Because sometimes no length of string is long enough to say the thing that needs to be said. In such cases, all strings can do, whatever of their form, is to conduct a person's silence. So just silently, the string is gently, gently tugged all the way around. You guys are vigorous tuggers. All right. Sometimes a string can connect us the way it did long ago to pass on what we have to say. Silence is sometimes much more powerful than words in our bodies and what our bodies say. Take your strings home and go in peace, and let's finish our service.